Hi everyone, I'll finish up language in this lecture and then we'll go on to talk about cognition. So I got cut off when I was in the middle of talking about linguistic determinism and this question of how language influences thinking. Another component of this question is, does language influence personality? And some research has shown that it actually does. So in one study, individuals who are bilingual they took different personality profiles. I'm sorry, they took two different personality tests. One test in their first language and one test in their second language. And it was the same test asking the same questions just in two different languages. And the research shows that many of them revealed a different personality profile. So even though they're the same person, depending on the language that they're in, they they may have changed personalities, or really you could say that language allows them to express their personality in a different way. Another study compared China-born bilingual students in Iowa, and it asked them to describe themselves in English and in Chinese. And English versions of themselves fit typical profiles of these students expressed positive self-statements, positive moods. Now, when they responded in Chinese, they gave Chinese type of descriptions, Chinese cultural descriptions. You could say they reported more agreement with Chinese values and roughly equal positive and negative self-statements and moods. So the researchers argued that their language use seemed to shape how they thought of themselves. Here's another study. So here we have a spectrum between green and blue, and each box here changes one level of color. If researchers divided this spectrum in half and participants were given the name green for this box and blue for this box, it was much easier for participants to think of these in terms of two different names and remember these different colors. Participants viewed these two boxes, the A boxes, as much more different than these two boxes, the two blue boxes, though each of these varies the same level on the color spectrum. Because these two boxes had different names, participants viewed them as distinctly different. So we talked in class today about bilingualism, people who know two or more languages, multilingualism, and one of the most interesting findings here is this concept of increased word power. So the more words you have, the more general knowledge you have, and it says it pays for speakers and deaf individuals who learn sign language. People who are bilingual, who are fluent in two languages, tend to have an advantage overall. They're better able to inhibit their attention to irrelevant information because they have been practicing inhibiting one language while using the other. But this concept also is talking about general vocabulary growth in general. It pays to increase your word power. Most textbooks, including this one, the one that we've been using, introduce new words because sometimes you do need a word to explain or identify a concept. Generally, children who are bilingual, they learn two languages, or they learn their second language without detriment to their first language if they're allowed the opportunity to use both. And they generally have higher aptitude scores on tests. Creativity tests they score better, and they have an expanded view of a culture. It's interesting if you think about it, actually. Many native English speakers are monolingual. Most Americans are monolingual. We only speak one language fluently, but most humans on the planet are bilingual or multilingual. Something to think about. So of course we do have some criticism. So here's some criticism with Papua New Guinea. It says that although people from Papua New Guinea do not use our words for colors and shapes, they still perceive them as we do. So Roche did some studies that show that the perception of these features still exists, they just don't have specific words. Now we're going to kind of bridge into cognition. So talking about how you think, oftentimes when we think, we're actually thinking not always in words. So yeah, you might have self-talk or inner speech like Vygotsky spoke of, but we also tend to think in images. So think about when you turn on the water, if you're turning on hot water. Do you think to yourself of the words? Are you talking to yourself to tell yourself to turn on the hot water, or is it more that motion, that implicit memory, or do you actually see the direction that the water tap turns? And when you're riding your bicycle, are you actually thinking about that in words, or is it more of a visual experience? And remember this connection to the brain. We had talked about mirror neurons, I believe maybe in chapter 3 and 4 in part 1 of this course. But when you imagine a physical activity, when you actually think about it and you see that, you have that mental image, it activates the same brain region as when you're actually doing. Much of sports psychology is based on this kind of neuroscience. Many elite athletes they spend time training in the mental imagery just as much as they spend time training physically. So I'm sure some of you might be wondering about what about animal speech, animal language? So there has been research on animals and their communication behavior. And here's some research on honeybees. They communicate by dancing. And the way that they dance, the way that they move, it clearly indicates the direction of the nectar. And you've probably seen maybe videos about animal communication. Maybe you remember seeing videos of Coco. And animals have been trained, particularly gorillas. You could say this experiment. Some animals have been trained to use human language or to use words via signs, and this is fine. But many psychologists would say, well, that's nice, maybe to demonstrate what other animals are able to do. But maybe another question to think about, some of the criticism with that is, why should we expect a non-human animal to communicate using human communication systems? It really is kind of an interesting question. So primates trained by humans really have very few words, and that learning has been through very extensive training. There's limited ordering and highly repetitive. So if we were to translate some work on chimpanzees, some utterances, it's really quite interesting. After several years of training, here's the best we can get. Nim eat, drink eat me nim, me gum, tickle me, nim play, me eat, me banana, me you give, banana, me eat, give orange, me give, eat orange, me eat orange. Maybe interesting, but even a not very intelligent 2-year-old can produce better language than this. Nobody expects human babies to learn how to dance like bees, sing like birds, or hoot like vervet monkeys, right? Maybe it's to demonstrate how smart chimps are. Maybe, but actually, maybe a better question for us is language ability a gauge of general smartness? Something to think about. Next week we're going to talk about intelligence and testing. So does language ability, does that have a piece in your intelligence, or is that separate? Another argument maybe that has been made is that chimps are our nearest evolutionary relatives. Yeah, okay, but 5 to 10 million years ago, from the evolutionary point of view, would have been when the split happened. There's been plenty of time, if you're looking at this from the evolutionary psychology perspective, plenty of time for specialized brain structures to evolve. So if you really like this language stuff, in college, you, instead of the psychology department, you actually can, there's an entire department looking at the study of language. So linguistics would be your major if you're really into that kind of thing. But these are all kinds of questions you can study with that bridge between psychology and language.